Today we're going to be talking about the genres of literature, mostly focusing on fiction. So today, after we've done our Wordy Wednesday for the vocab word fiction for this week, we're going to go through and complete this fiction genre sort. So just to kind of go over this a little bit, what you're going to end up doing is you are going to, go to the next slide, you're going to take each of these here and you're going to put them either into historical fiction as a topic, realistic fiction, fantasy, or science fiction. So if I go back to the different types, if I go back to the other page. So to go over these, we have some of the most common fiction types are fantasy, science fiction, historical fiction, mystery, realistic fiction, westerns, folk tales, and fairy tales. Down here at the bottom, it describes each of these to us, but I'm going to go ahead and go to the next page. So historical fiction is whenever something happens, or a book talks about something that happened in history, but there's made up characters. So part of it might be true, it did happen in history, or it did happen in the past, but a lot of the stuff is also made up. Realistic fiction, you want to think of real. So this is a made up story, but could really happen. So most of the stories that we read this year are either historical fiction or realistic fiction. So again, realistic fiction meaning that this could really happen in real life. Fantasy, this is where we might have magic or talking animals, things that are not real. Things like, think of like magic and princesses and fairy godmothers and magic. Then we have science fiction. So science fiction would be things that deal with space, aliens, different things like that. If I go back over here, so think about might be science, how it influences our world. Again, space, life on other planets, or aliens. So there's an example on here. My teacher is an alien would be an example of a book. Even robots could be considered science fiction. So all you're going to do then is you're going to take each of these topics or things or even characters and you're going to place them in the correct section: historical fiction, realistic fiction, fantasy, or science fiction. So what I'm going to do is we're going to go ahead and maybe do magic wand together. So magic wand, so again, magic, if anything deals with magic or mystical creatures, it's going to go under fantasy. So what I would do, let me exit out of this. I would go ahead, let me make my screen a little bit bigger. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to type magic wand here. Let me present my screen back to you. Once I do that, I can cross that off. If you prefer to print this off, that can be done that way as well. So all you're going to do is type each of these where they need to go. Let's think of aliens from another planet. Well, we talked about science fiction deals with aliens or things from outer space. So that part would go over here into science fiction. Next one, magic spells. Well, again, we're talking about magic wand goes under fantasy, so would magic spells. Let's go ahead. Maybe we'll draw an arrow to show where these go. Let's do blue today. So we said magic wand is going to go here. We said aliens is going to go to science fiction. Magic spells, we said, is also going to go to fantasy. Now, kids riding bikes, that's something that can actually happen in real life. So I'm going to take kids riding in real bikes, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to type it in realistic fiction. Now, even though I was just using the pen for that, you actually need to type it into the section that they fall under. Okay? If you have any questions or don't remember what each of these are, go back to the first page. Let me erase all of my things here so you can see the page. So if you don't remember what those are, you could go back to the page before, and right here it tells about historical fiction, talks to you about fantasy, magical creatures, realistic fiction, something that could really happen in real life. An example would be Shiloh. Science fiction, again, remember it talks about aliens, robots, space, life on other planets. So again, if you're not sure, you look back at this page and I'll go over each of those with you. And then you're simply going to sort each of these into one of these categories: historical fiction, realistic fiction, fantasy, or science fiction.